March 31st, 2020 is a day I'll never forget. It was the day that two people very close to us, that are close to my family, passed away from COVID-19. This was in the very early days of COVID. We didn't know much about it at the time. We just knew that we were all at home, or if you were working, you were, in mask and washing your hands constantly, and isolated. It was a crazy time. I mean, I know why people want to block it out, but we shouldn't. That's why I want to talk about it today. Um, it started with the story starts March 11th. At that point, we knew there was something going on. Um, that was the day that the Utah Jazz, Rudy Gobert, had tested positive for COVID, so the NBA season stopped. A lot of the other sports things stopped. A lot of the other live events stopped. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson found out they had it while they were in Australia. Other people found out also. The president at the time went out and spoke about it in very vague terms. So that day, that evening, I remember saying, I need to go over and see our friend Julie or Marianne um, at her senior living facility because she could be locked up for a week or so because when they had flu outbreaks or other things, they would not let visitors come. So I went over to see her for a little while. I remember trying to explain a little bit to her that we'd probably be calling for a few days, um, and that we loved her and that we would see her soon. Um, Only to find out that a couple weeks later, everybody was still locked up. She was fine. Next thing you know, she's going crazy because she can't breathe. Her oxygen level dropped to 60 and it should have been like at 110. So she was screaming. She was rushed right away to Cedars-Sinai, which was the designated COVID hospital in the area. Um, and that's when we found out that, she was there. She was on a morphine drip, so we could go visit her, but it didn't make sense to kind of go there just to see someone unconscious and just on morphine, especially in that kind of circumstances. Um, so we knew she only had a few days. So meanwhile, try to keep in touch with family and friends. We hadn't heard from my son's godfather in 3 or 4 days. I'd left messages at home. I was on a cell. And the morning of the 31st, I thought I'm going to just check and see if there's something on Facebook. There's an update. That's when we found that he had passed away at home from it. And they had found him. His neighbors had gone to get some prescription or something for him. And then by the time they were able to get to him, he was gone. Um, then that night, about 8 o'clock, we got the call about Julie, which kind of didn't surprise us, but it still surprised us. Then all of a sudden, we're getting like, "What are you going to do about funerals? What are you going to do about all this stuff?" Things we hadn't even thought about, a week earlier. Um, so we dealt with that. Um, I remember then, just being home working and remember hearing on the news, I think it was Chuck Todd on Meet the Press saying that people don't understand COVID until it affects them. Because it really was the East Coast in New York and the LA and San Francisco. Um, so we were hit early on. There was like maybe 5,000 people at that point who had passed away. I remember giving the information to Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and Deadline. Julie was a manager and she was also an actress. She was mostly known for her voiceover work. She was Cindy Bear in the Yogi Bear series, a bunch of other characters, but this is the one she's best known for. So when she passed away, it made headlines all over the world. A lot of places people covered it. It was sad and it was touching. It was weird that she was huge in India and Italy, but she would have appreciated that. Um, so we dealt with everything for her because, like I said, we pretty much had adopted her a few years earlier. We have her remains with us, and also a, memorial at the Gary Marshall Theater here in Toluca Lake in Burbank. Um, so dealing with that, it was tough enough as it was, but then finding out that Trump knew about COVID from the Bob Woodward book early on. We found out he had a playbook from the Obama administration on what to do during a pandemic that he ignored, um, and that he had also sent COVID, testing stuff and that to Putin while people here were dying and needing it. You can remember hearing the stories, especially in New York. It's just how crazy it was. I just remember that they were supposed to hold her body, Julie's body, for 3 days, and they didn't. They had to release it early because of they didn't have any space. Cedars had no space for it. Um, it was a crazy time. And I think people try to forget about it. They try to forget that we didn't have toilet paper, that people were working from home, people were learning to adjust to Zoom and to, just dealing with all sorts of stuff that we didn't know we had to. Um, and most of it could have been avoided. There still could have been people who passed away. There still could have been, different situations that happened economically, but it devastated the country. And I think people have forgotten that now. They forgot how bad it was and how people were dying every single day and how um, it started to hit everywhere else. And people were, just like, I'm not going to get shots because of misinformation. I'm not going to listen to Dr. Fauci because of misinformation. It was all because of his shitty way of handling things. He didn't want to either deal with it. He was either inept, too egotistical, or too stupid, or had dementia. And his people were all afraid of him. And the one time that he had a real situation, he couldn't handle it. And people all over the world died because of his mismanagement um, with the situation and just lack of understanding what was going on. And, no matter what some of the people who tried to fight him do, couldn't. But, meanwhile, lots of people lost family members. A lot of people lost friends. A lot of people lost jobs. A lot of kids are all screwed up. A lot of adults are all screwed up. You know, um, it's affected us. And I think people have avoided discussing it. I know the media it doesn't really have a lot of like films or shows that has people wearing masks or doing things. It's just kind of not done. But we should face it head on and remember it because there's going to be other pandemics soon. And he can't be reelected because he can't handle the one situation that he had to handle. What can you do with the war and that? Why it took people forget how long it took the Biden-Harris administration to get over stuff, how much the governors were all fighting each other like it was the Hunger Games. And just people being lost and just every day hearing more and more names. They were just kind of like just numbers on the bottom of the screen. But they were people. I remember besides all the stuff in the trades and how it was, how her obituary went all around the world, she was part of an LA Times tribute like called The Lives We Lost. And it was Californians who had passed away from COVID, ranging from priests, cops, doctors, um, parents, grandparents, cousins, teachers, all sorts of people that she was among the people in California who passed away, who 90% of them didn't need to, or didn't need, most of them didn't need to, but they didn't have to die, you know. And I think that's why, beyond everything else, he shouldn't be reelected. You need to have someone who has common sense and who understands what's going on and can deal with the problem and not avoid it and not blame everybody else for it because too many lives were affected, too many lives were lost. We didn't have a chance to say goodbye to friends of ours. I'm sure many people didn't. It's just wrong. So we pray for all those people and their families. Every time I hear something or every time I find something on the anniversary, just pull up stuff, for them, um, and just remember them because, those were lives that were lost that shouldn't have been. So with good leadership, it won't happen again.